It's Montel here, and thanks so much for tuning into this edition of Let's Be Blunt with Montel, where we talk about everything and anything cannabis, trying to make sure we get you the right amount of information that you need to be able to navigate this space when you're making decisions for you and your family, especially when you're walking into some of these dispensaries around here and you don't have any idea of what you're looking for. We want to get you some information that'll help to educate you to make a good choice for you and your family. And our guest today is just an incredibly wonderful guest that I know that a lot of you are going to find inspirational and really be happy that we had him on here to talk to you today. He's the co-founder and CEO of a company that's called Hempagenix, which is a company that develops cutting-edge hemp and plant-based consumer products. He's also a patient advocate on the Broward County's Medical Marijuana Board. He's also become an activist in cannabis in order to fight the good fight and fight a fight for kids like his own daughter, Rebecca, who is severely impaired with a neurologically impaired disorder and also suffers from multiple seizures per day. He's joining us today here with his wife, Danielle, and their daughter, Rebecca, who's here in the room with us. And I can't say thanks enough to Seth Hyman for being here and being a part of Let's Be Blunt with Montel.
Thank you, Montel. It's my pleasure to be here. My hat's off to you for all the great work you've done over the years. Always wanted to have this opportunity to sit down with you, and thank you for what you have done, Montel.
Oh, no, thank you, sir. And, I got to tell you, one of the things that just so people at home understand, before we start these podcasts, sometimes we, sit back and we have little conversations and talk a little bit before we actually start recording. And, I was kind of moved a little bit with a couple of comments that you made before we started recording. And I think I want you to share that with people. Make people understand you have a daughter who has suffered from maladies from birth, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, take us on that journey for just a second and make people understand and get a grip to understanding what a family like yours has to go through.
Sure, absolutely. I appreciate that. Rebecca had during my wife's pregnancy, there was some signs of potential issues. It had to do with the growth of Rebecca's brain, and the doctor at the time said, let's check back at the end of the pregnancy. Let's see how things are turning out. If it turns out that things look normal, everything's fine. And sure enough, everything did turn out fine as far as her brain size, but unfortunately, we didn't learn till much later what actually Rebecca was faced with. And that was when she was born, she started to have breathing issues. During feeding, she would start to turn blue. Her doctor said it's pretty normal for newborns. They have problems feeding, breathing, swallowing. Don't worry about it. Many months later, she still had the same problem. She wasn't growing as fast as she should as a typical infant. And we started to become very, very concerned. She eventually had to be put on a feeding tube, which goes through your stomach. But no one gave us real answers. And finally, at month 9, we knew something was severely wrong, and we went to many physicians here in Florida, and one physician at a top hospital said, your daughter needs a tracheotomy. So imagine having a new infant being told you need a tracheotomy. And when we went to the physician, they said if you don't get it within 2 weeks, your daughter could most likely die. Mm-hmm. So I seeked out for the best care for her and found some specialists in Boston, and it ended up that they did a bronchoscopy and they said your daughter's airway is blocked 80%. They had to remove a cyst that was blocking it, and during that they did genetic testing because the genetic testing that we did here in Florida came up negative. Nobody could find out what was wrong. And what we finally found out at about month 9 or 10 was that she has a severe genetic disorder called 1p36 deletion syndrome. What that means is part of her number 1 chromosome is partially deleted. And because of it, children like Rebecca, many of them don't walk. Rebecca doesn't talk. She has neurological, visual, hearing impairments. She has a feeding tube. She needs 24-hour care. She didn't start having seizures until probably she was 4 years old. So even though we knew 80% of the children with her genetic disorder had seizures, we thought we would.
But you missed that one.
We thought we missed that one.
Gotcha.
And then unfortunately the seizures started coming on to the point where they were consuming her life, hundreds of seizures a day.
And let's stop for a second and explain, as a parent, what that's like for you.
So the one thing that I like to share, and when I speak on this topic to parents who have healthy children, how blessed they are to have healthy children, imagine waking up and going into your child's bedroom and wondering whether or not the child is going to be alive or dead in the morning.
Right.
And that's what parents like us face. Thank God we have nurses watching her at night, because she has seizures during the night, many during the night. And when you have seizures like Rebecca, or any kind of seizure, if there's no intervention, the patient could go further into the seizure and ultimately die because they can't breathe. So intervention is key for someone to have a seizure. We have families, friends of ours who've lost their children from seizures at night. They wake up, they go to the child's bed in the morning, the child is dead. So that's something that we live with every day now, even with nurses. We worry. There are many nights when we don't have nurses, and on those nights, my wife is up all night. She can't sleep because, God forbid, Rebecca has a seizure at the night, she has to intervene. So when I see people in the morning and I'm up 24/7 because my daughter had a rough night, or I'm in the hospital till 5 a.m., people don't know what we've been through. And if there were cameras in our house and saw our life, the first thing people would say is, how do you do that every single day? If you knew what we went through 2 nights ago, you'd be like, does this happen often? Yes, it happens often.
And now you went through a period of how many years? I want to talk about cannabis intervention, but how many years did you go with Rebecca having these kinds of seizures before you actually said, you know what, let's try this thing that they're calling, what is it called, Charlotte's Web? Let's try this thing that they're talking about, cannabis. How many years did you go from the onset of her seizures till finding some relief?
Probably 4.
4 years.
4.
And this is 4 years with your daughter having 200 to 300 seizures a day.
Correct, and non-responsive to over 30 pharmaceuticals.
And I'm talking you went the gamut, every pharmaceutical available to man.
Keppra, Topamax, I mean, you name it. And the traditional pharmaceuticals, they either make her seizures worse, or they either do nothing, or they greatly affect her behavior to the point where many children like Rebecca, they will put their hand in their mouth, sort of like sucking a thumb to soothe them, but they also do it out of frustration. She was doing out of frustration from the pharmaceuticals, where her skin would actually break and she would bleed. That's how much pharmaceuticals affected her. So to this
without
day,
giving her the relief from the seizures.
Correct. And the doctors say, just give it to her just so she takes it, even though it doesn't do anything.
You know, I have to be 100% disclosure. I have a daughter who literally had adolescent onset epilepsy that, you know, unfortunately, you know, it took several years for them to diagnose, because she would not have full grand mal seizures. She would have mini mals, and she would have auras. So, you know, people couldn't figure out what was going on. But then I understand, you know, having a child who has been medicated on every form of medication that there is and not get any relief.
Rebecca has all types of seizures, auras, myoclonic tonic, you name it. Imagine being presented with a document at Rebecca's physician's office, her neurologist, and the neurologist says, if you want to take this medicine, you need to sign this document. The document basically said it could potentially cause blindness or death.
Right.
We never signed it. We never went that route.
Absolutely. So what introduced you to, and it's okay, and I know that you tuning in or listening, you're probably hearing, Rebecca's having an issue right now. And, you know, this is what you live through all day long.
Correct. 24/7. And since Rebecca doesn't speak, the way she expresses herself verbally is through noises. Mm-hmm. And some of these noises right now are a happy noise.
Got it. And I noticed you had said to me before, you don't have to take her out. Honestly, she's not that. It's not, the noise is not disturbing anybody. And if it is, screw you.
Exactly.
No, I don't care. I could care less if anybody complains about her noise, honestly. And it's not so overbearing that we can't speak and you can't hear what we're saying.
And you can bring her in the shot whenever you want.
Absolutely. No, it doesn't. Yep. I don't think that's necessary. Just people at home, you don't need to actually see Rebecca going through what she's going through. But let's understand, you just said she's communicating with you.
You know, Montel, I don't know if the listeners at home could see what I see right now, but this is my life. You go through this in your life. And I'm looking at you, Montel, and your eyes are just as watery as mine. Many few people could truly understand what we go through, what you've experienced in your life, what you experience daily in life with your medical challenges.
Right.
Nobody can understand unless they experience it.
Well,
And-
but I mean, this is part of the reason why I even started this advocacy 20 years ago, because I really stepped up to the plate when I was diagnosed myself with MS and realized that all the opioids that I had been put on, which back before we were even discussing opioid addiction in this country, I know I had an opioid addiction, but really, I know I back up and say I probably didn't have an addiction because I found out through my journey with opioids that I am not as responsive to opioids as most people are. I have some sort of a block. So rather than me taking, 1 or 2 Vicodin, I was taking 7 and 8 Vicodin and still able to communicate, walk around, talk. I wasn't drooling in a corner. I had doctors put me on stuff that most people really couldn't survive taking 2 of. I was taking 5, 6, and 7 of and getting no relief. So that old saying of, walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, I do truly understand what you and your family are going through. And it hurts because 20 years ago, I recognized this. 20 years later, we're still battling now to take the patients off the battlefield.
Well, there's a lot of money in the pharmaceutical industry, and unfortunately, that's a big fight for all of us. You mentioned opioids. Most seizure medications are opiates.
Correct.
Rebecca's on a drug, a pharmaceutical called clobazam or Onfi. It's an opioid. It's a benzo. A couple of months ago, she started to have these terrible clusters of seizures. Now, somebody could have a seizure, it could last anywhere between 5 seconds and 4 hours.
Right.
Hers range go across the gamut. But about 3 or 4 months ago, she started having these clusters where she would seize for about 60 seconds. She then would stop. There would be a break for 30 seconds or a minute. Then she would seize again for another minute. We have a protocol that we follow at home with certain emergency meds. So what happened was she started to have all of these clusters. We know then we give her an emergency med called Diastat, which is diazepam. It's a benzodiazepine, like Valium and Xanax. She gets 20 milligrams of that.
But a stronger one than Valium.
Correct. Very strong one. Yes. And it's administered rectally for immediate effect. And if that doesn't work, we then go for another one. And we can give her, believe it's 15 milligrams more. Now, that's it for us as what we can do at home. The reason being is all of these emergency meds affect the heart rate, blood pressure. So at home, you're not in a controlled environment like an ER where you can be intubated, et cetera. So we have to be very careful. But just to give you an example, during this experience, we gave her 20 milligrams of the diazepam. Then she got another 15. Then we called EMS because this was going on for a long time and we felt we needed medical attention. Then in the ambulance, they gave her Versed, which is midazolam. It's a drug usually used for anesthesia, for sedation. Then when she got to the hospital, they gave her Ativan, which is a brand name for lorazepam, which is another benzo. Think of this 90-pound 13-year-old getting all these drugs. Her seizures are still going on. We're now going to hour 2. By hour 3, they gave her 800 milligrams of Keppra in the ER, which is a seizure medication.
Sure, which almost initiates a coma, right?
Wait. Then at hour 4, she's still seizing. At hour 4, they gave her another 800 milligrams of Keppra. Finally, by hour 5, things stopped. And I tell this story because those kinds of clusters, what she experienced, we now try to handle a different way with cannabis.
And let's talk about that. Again, what made you, how did you hear about it? How did you find out about it? What triggered cannabis in your brain?
So what triggered cannabis in my brain was back in 2012, I saw a family in California who it was a dad, he has a son who has seizures. He has Dravet syndrome. And I became friendly with him. and he educated me on the benefits of cannabis. And at the time, it was basically CBD, a high CBD, low THC
And you were
product.
communicating with him how? By the phone?
By phone.
Okay,
By
gotcha.
phone.
Okay.
And that really started to pique my interest. How could there possibly be something out there that could help my child that mainstream medical professionals aren't aware of? And then as I learned more, I became more interested. So doing my homework, I came across a gentleman in Florida. This was back in 2012, Irv Rosenfeld.
Irv Rosenfeld.
And Irv Rosenfeld
Was a hero to the industry, by the way.
exactly. I call him my mentor because he really educated me and my wife on cannabis. He came to our home, spent an enormous amount of time educating us. He was always there for us. And that's really how we got involved and started. And from there on, the rest is history.
Wow. And so the first time you decided to, initiate the use of cannabis with Rebecca, how did she respond? Let's talk a little bit about that.
The first time she used it, we didn't know what to expect.
And were you using it in what form?
It was a tincture.
Tincture, okay.
It was a tincture that she was getting either orally, because she really can't swallow that great, but it was a tincture either orally or given through her feeding tube.
Gotcha.
And the one thing that we noticed at the time, that her seizures started to not occur as frequent as they used to.
Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5?
Probably about a week.
About a week.
About a week.
And this is after daily use.
Correct.
Because again, I'm sure that Irv said it to you, and I'm sure that the gentleman that you talked to on the West Coast said it to you, that the body has to absorb a certain amount of this before you get a reaction.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely. Very similar to other medications.
Correct.
So what we noticed was the seizure started to slow down, but also Rebecca's nonverbal. And we noticed Rebecca trying to verbalize, which now I know through many years of following this, children with autism who are nonverbal, who are using cannabis products with THC, not just CBD.
Correct.
A lot of very interesting things happen. And for Rebecca, she started to become try to verbalize herself more than anything we've ever seen before. So there are a lot of different things that were happening when we started it. And then, as many people know who started using cannabis before there was the research that we have available even today, how much do you give her? Dosing. Dosing has been the buzzword in the industry, since the beginning.
Sure.
How do I know how much to take? And we did a lot of homework on that, and every patient is different.
Right.
She might react totally different than a patient twice her weight, or vice versa. So we just started out very slowly, titrating up to a level that we started to see improvements. And you also have to be careful, because if you titrate up too quickly with too much, you can have an adverse effect.
Correct.
So to this day, I will always say to patients, don't always go by what the doctors say, especially a lot of these new doctors who are coming into the market who are ordering cannabis for their patients. Most patients know more than a doctor. You have to be the best advocate you can be for yourself.
Certainly. So you started titrating her up, and right now, what is she on milligram-wise, or can you estimate?
Right now, she is not on a THC product.
Okay.
She is strictly on a CBD product, and she's taking about 200 milligrams a day of CBD.
And that CBD, is it a isolate? Or
No.
does it have terpenes in it? Does it have other cannabinoids in it other than THC?
This particular product that she's taking is Epidiolex.
Okay, so she's on Epidiolex.
She's on Epidiolex.
So you went to the prescription level.
Correct.
Okay, but before she started Epidiolex, what was she on?
She was on similar products we weren't giving her as many milligrams of CBD as she's taking now a day. Some of the children on Epidiolex are taking 800 milligrams a day.
And I also noticed, again, Epidiolex is also a drug that is, again, a CBD isolate, which doesn't have some of the other cannabinoids in it, when we know for a fact that, the person who even discovered this, who's Dr. Mashulam, out of Israel stated unequivocally that cannabinoids work best in an entourage effect. And so even if you're not using THC or even THCA, the other cannabinoids could probably have an equal and viable, effect if added in.
Absolutely. So let me just share with you a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing. The issue that I see for a patient, I'll talk specifically for her.
Yes.
Without the medical research working with us on a continuous basis, it is very difficult for patients to really know what's working and what's not working. What I mean by that is, I communicated with Dr. Mashula many years ago, and he brought up the same thing that you just mentioned, Montel. The problem is, Rebecca has tried dozens, I don't even know how many at this point, different strains of CBD from around the world. It was all tested, we got the COAs for everything, but because we never knew exactly how her metabolism and how Rebecca was responding, it was very hard for us to gauge on an ongoing basis, is this working because of this? Is it not working because it doesn't have this? And to this day, that's where we are at. We are at a point right now that until the medical science could work with us on a frequent basis, even the doctors who are prescribing, because it's a pharmaceutical, Epidiolex, they do basic blood work, but are they going deep into the DNA and all the CBN and the CB? No, they're not. So for us, it's going to be a continuous challenge to find a long-term solution that will truly help Rebecca and other patients with seizures, because there's no true medical science geared towards that patient.
Got it. And it's got to be all patient-centric. You said, a product that helps Rebecca and others. We may never find a product that helps Rebecca and others. We may find a product that helps Rebecca.
Correct.
And it could be a configuration of 60 of the 160 cannabinoids that have been identified to date. For her, and then another child that has a similar malady could get benefits from 20.
Right.
Or get benefits from 110.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think until the day comes when patients could work with physicians where they're doing blood work, they're doing other metabolics on an ongoing basis, we will never know what truly works, because you might never even titrate up to a level that could be effective.
Right.
What happens with a patient like Rebecca if she's taking CBD? Let's not even use Epidiolex, but she's using CBD, a great strain, a great brand. You have all of the COAs behind it. You know what you're taking. But do I do a 1-to-1 ratio? How much THC should that patient get? How long will it take to titrate up to a level where we find a good response? It's basically hit or miss. Right. That's the frustrating part. Right. And there's nobody to turn to say, you know what, I want my child or the patient to be part of a program, and we want to do this the right way, where we have a medical team behind us, we have data, we have metabolics, blood work, everything, so we can truly track on what is working and what's not working. There's no clear science behind it yet.
Right. And it doesn't look like on the horizon it's going to be there relatively quickly. I don't see, and again, though there is research that's being done, and there's a lot of, organizations claiming to be doing, IRB research. They're really not doing research. It's weird. They get a CBD. Well, where did you get the CBD from? Is it hemp-based or is it cannabis-based? If it's cannabis-based, which strain did you get it from? Exactly. And then once you got that, and you extracted out all the terpenes, and you extracted out all of the fats and the lipids, could the fats and the lipids have been more, efficacious had they been there along with the CBD? And then along with the CBD, should you have had some, THCA? Should you have had something to act as the catalyst to break the, mitochondrial wall?
Correct.
So, yeah.
And THCA, from what we've heard in different groups, that is helpful for children with seizures.
So CBG is helpful with children with seizures. And
right.
we know that CBG is what turns into THC and CBD.
But then the other thing, what we found out, and I can never prove it, and I don't even want to stand by this statement now, but she tried CO2 extracted CBD. She tried butane.
Cryoethanol. She shouldn't be doing any butane whatsoever.
Right, exactly. Solvent-based.
No solvent-based whatsoever. Hexane, no. I mean, we know for a fact how deleterious that can be in the food manufacturing industry, leaving behind residuals.
Exactly.
And, to me, let me tell you something. I have been one of these proponents, make a lot of people really angry, especially when they hear me say that Montel's against butane. Hell yeah, I'm against butane.
Right.
I wouldn't walk out and put my mouth around the exhaust pipe of a car and suck in the air.
Exactly.
And you can't tell me that, when you say, well, I had it tested and it came out 250 parts per million. Really? So what makes you think 250 parts per million is good when it comes to butane?
So there's another process. I forgot.
Cryoethanol?
No, pressed, where it's like cold pressed.
Cold pressed?
Cold pressed. It's like, we never tried that. So if we tried a cold pressed CBD, different variation of CBD to THC, maybe that could help.
Or have you tried a nanoparticle?
Haven't tried any nanoparticles.
So, again, I understand. And again, this is what, for our listeners out there, families that are going through this, that's why I want to do podcasts like this, because it is so hard to navigate this space, especially when the viable information isn't even there, it doesn't exist, tests haven't been done, and then even the anecdotal isn't there.
And what happens if you do find the right formulation or strain, et cetera, but then there are other contributing factors that could affect it? For example, your diet. Rebecca was on the ketogenic diet. Didn't do anything for her.
Okay.
But if you try something that works and then your diet consists of something that could counteract, well, it could have worked, but you know what? You were eating, the child or the patient was eating grapefruits.
Correct.
Grapefruits affect certain medications. All of this needs to be tracked scientifically.
Right.
And it's very frustrating because nobody wants to get behind it.
But if we look at it from the bigger perspective, we know that cannabis has been used as a medical agent for over 5,000 years in whole plant form. So some of what I think we've got to do is get out of our own heads here, where there's too many people trying to be pseudoscientists, where, it's the reason why we have close to, 1,000, 2,000 different strains. If you go back in science, we know for a fact that the cannabis plant, marijuana plant, started off with seven plants. Now you got thousands, and those thousands are really all derivatives of those first seven. So, you can have, you go into a dispensary and you see 20 different strains that are sitting there. Those 20 different strains have been crossbred over the course of the last, in the United States of America in the 1960s and the 70s, we worked diligently to breed the CBD out of the plant. A lot of people don't know that. America is part of the reason why the plant has been as adulterated as it has been. Had you left it alone back in the early 60s and not tried to figure out that, more THC, the more THC we get, which no one can tell me that. I don't care. And I offer the opportunity for anybody to text me, shoot me a note, email, whatever you want to say. You can't tell me that you can tell the difference between something that is a 27% THC, a 21% THC, or a 14% THC. You can't. You're lying to yourself if you think you can. I know people who, and I remember myself that in my teenage years, smoking marijuana back in my teenage years and being higher than I have ever been in my life. And if you look at the plants that were available back then, they were never higher than about 12 to 13% THC. But absolutely blottoed, that's the term we used to use, blotto, completely obliterated by a half a joint. Now I find some stuff out here now, even if you're dabbing, even if you're using stuff in a crystalline form that supposedly is 29, 28, 30% THC, it's nowhere near the euphoria.
Right. And I think it's also important to point out, you mentioned earlier about how when using opiates, your body gets used to it and
Correct.
It starts not to affect you. And I think it's very important for people to understand that when you're a medical marijuana patient and you have a real legitimate medical condition,
which is trying to affect, stimulate, or antagonize your endocannabinoid system, but go right ahead.
Correct. And when you start using marijuana with THC for medical reasons, the way your body is going to react is going to be totally different than an individual who doesn't have that medical condition. So for an example, somebody with a severe medical, let's say pain condition, they could use an enormous amount of marijuana daily with high THC, let's say, to help treat their pain, but they're not going to walk around euphoric all day like the person who had no pain.
Correct.
Right.
Because it is antagonizing that endocannabinoid system, trying to get that back into balance, and your body's figuring out what to do to make that happen. And over time, we also recognize the fact that, you know, there becomes an assimilation where, you know, your body starts to react to it differently at different levels. So you might, you know, start off, and I've been using cannabis now for, 20 years almost straight, daily. And I'm going to guarantee you that the way it affects me today is different than the way it affected me 5 years ago. I had a stroke a year and a half ago. The way it affects me now post-stroke is entirely different than the way it affected me pre-stroke. And I have to be very, very careful and very, very concerned about what it is I use on any given occasion. Especially if somebody walks up to me and says, "Hey, Montel, I heard you use cannabis here. Get to this." I don't consume anything that I don't produce.
Exactly.
Myself.
Because many people don't realize that THC could affect your heart rate, blood
Absolutely.
pressure, and people with heart conditions, and they're using a lot of THC, and you have to be real careful. Like you said, you have to know what you're getting and what you're putting into your body. That's the most important.
Well, I mean, what you've done for Rebecca has turned you into the advocate you are today, correct?
Correct. Absolutely. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
And talk a little bit about your position and what you do on the Broward County Medical Marijuana Advocacy Board.
So the Broward County Commission created a medical marijuana advisory board for individuals who have either a business knowledge, a patient knowledge, a plant knowledge about medical marijuana, because that's what we have here in Florida. And the creation of it was to help educate and guide the community with policies, guidelines, and laws to implement policies and guidelines and laws that truly make sense in the best interests of the community. And for us as a group, which is governed by the Broward County Commission, it's really about education. We've had 2 educational summits already. We're having another one down the road. And the attendees of these groups, of these summits that we have, are county commissioners, mayors, political figures. The last event that we had, the last educational summit, was first responders. So we had police chiefs, EMS people, mostly all EMS related. And the questions that come up and the content that we provide them, they look at us like, wow, I never knew that. So you mentioned it a lot about education. We're trying to educate the community.
That's right. Education is the key. Now, right now, Rebecca's reacting again, but I'm looking at her. She looks like is she tired of being in the same spot? Okay. She wants to take a little walk. Huh?
Yeah, she's happy when she does that.
She looked happy, like she was bothered. But again, that's your day-to-day life.
Correct, 24/7. So when I get a text from my wife, most of the time it's not how are you doing or how your day is going. It's Rebecca didn't go to school today with her nurse because she had two 4-minute seizures, and I don't think she's up to it. Or if I call her or text her, the first thing I say is, how is Rebecca? Did she have a seizure? Did she have her breakfast? How is she? What state of mind is she in? 24/7, doesn't end.
Right. And that advocacy you've now turned into helping other parents in the same situation. Talk a little bit about what you've done in terms of students, and because you literally had to make sure that Rebecca was able to utilize her medication in school, correct?
Correct, which she doesn't utilize it now, but when the Florida law passed that required school districts here in the state of Florida to provide a means of children to use their medicine at school, I had a conversation with the superintendent of Broward County Public Schools, Robert Runcie, who is a very incredible human being and supportive of children getting the things that they need, especially special needs students. And since it was a Florida law, I came in, I sat down with their health policy leaders, along with some other professionals, and we drafted guidelines and policy for Broward County Public Schools to allow children who are medical marijuana patients here in the state of Florida to have access to their medical marijuana medicine while at school. It doesn't mean, and under Florida law, it doesn't state that school employees, school nurses are able to administer, which they can't under Florida law, but at least it gives a way for the parent or the caregiver to come into the school, if needed, and administer the medication to their child. The way Rebecca gets her medicine now, it's not required for us to come in to the school. Also, the fact that she is using Hepa, which is an FDA-approved pharmaceutical,
Right.
that's okay.
And that's in the same category as any other pharmaceutical that any other child is using.
Exactly. And what's really crazy about that, if you take the chemical makeup of a product, a pharmaceutical like Hepa, and you put it next to a CBD product, a high-quality CBD product, and there are many out there, it could be almost identical,
Right.
but yet the Hepa could be administered by a nurse, but the CBD can't.
Right.
That's
really absolutely ridiculous.
right.
You know, it's just like you know, again, I often talk about there are several pharmaceutical grade krill oils in the marketplace. And then you can go to GNC and find a krill oil that's probably even better than some of the pharmaceutical grade krill oils. Yet, I guarantee you that the same thing would happen. School couldn't give you the one that you bought at GNC, but they give you the one that you buy from a doctor. Doesn't make sense to me.
That's why patients need to be their best advocate.
Absolutely. Patients and their caregivers.
Correct, 100%.
Talk a little bit about your company, Hepagenix.
So being involved in the understanding of hemp and how beneficial the cannabis plant is and the hemp plant, I thought, along with a partner of mine, the benefits of the hemp plant and how there's a desperate need for topical pain products that fall into a category of over-the-counter drugs outside the scope of CBD, cannabis, which are all, well, especially cannabis is federally legal. We wanted to create a product that not only truly worked, but was going to be readily available for individuals everywhere. They could buy it online, they could buy it in stores. And we created a product called CannaNumb. And CannaNumb is a federal trademark, which is another whole conversation on what can and can't be done because you can't get a trademark for cannabis products. We were able to get a trademark for CannaNumb, and CannaNumb is a hemp-based lidocaine product with other pain-fighting ingredients such as arnica, boswellia extract, glucosamine, and it's a roll-on product, and it works incredibly for pain.
Got it.
Similar to like a BioFreeze and Icy Hot, but a lot better.
Oh, wow. Wow, and that's available all 50 states online. How do
Yeah,
people get
it's
it? Tell them how to
right
get
now there are select retailers that carry it, but if you go to CannaNumb.com, you can purchase it. That's CannaNumb. The num is for the lidocaine part, and we'll even give your listeners 20% off if they enter in coupon code Montel.
Oh, there you go. So there you go. Just doing it right now. If you're out there right now, you're listening to this podcast, make sure you go up on CannaNumb, enter in code name Montel, and you'll get 20% discount.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, sir.
No problem.
I'm telling you, I know my listeners will love that. And not only are you changing the way that cannabis-based products are being perceived, but you've also been working on some other legislation in your state, right?
Well, it's a never-ending
Yes.
process here in the state of Florida. Florida started out with 5 winners of a license. There are now 22 license holders in the state of Florida. The industry has drastically changed over the last year. Some of these licenses were going for $60 to $120 million. A lot of things have changing because the companies that got in initially, one of the companies here in Florida, they have about 60 60 to 70% of market share. So if you're coming into the state now trying to build a brand, it's becoming financially very challenging. So there are individuals and groups out there trying to change the laws, trying to change the laws by constitutional amendments where more growers could be added, more dispensaries could be added, more independent companies can get involved with the industry, as well as there's a amendment out there, Regulate Florida, where it states that patients can grow their own up to a certain amount of plants. There are 2 or 3 amendments here in Florida. So it's never ending. Unfortunately, many of the times the patient doesn't come out the winner.
Yeah, it's really weird to me, and I am not in any way, shape, or form against those who want to take the time to grow for themselves, but there are so many patients out here who don't have the dexterity, don't have the know-how, and don't have the time to sit back and grow your own. There should be more legislation that allows for better availability.
Not only that, there's a huge patient base out there that just can't afford it.
Right.
You have many of the families that we know have children who have seizures. They're on Medicaid. You have veterans who are on fixed incomes. So the cannabis that's available from Florida dispensaries, many people can't afford it.
And they turn it to the black market.
Exactly. And not only can't they afford the legal medicine from these dispensaries, they can't even afford the registration process that you have to go through to become a patient. For us, if I wanted to be a medical marijuana patient in Florida, I have to pay $75 for myself. But let's say I don't want to become a patient and I just want to be a caregiver for my daughter. I have to pay $75 for me to become a caregiver. Then I have to pay another $75 for my daughter for her to have her card. So that's $150 a year. Now, many people might say, well, it's only $150. There are a lot of families who can't afford that.
Absolutely.
So supposedly the legislature was going to address that, at least for veterans, I heard possibly, that maybe they don't have to pay for a card, but the whole process is very expensive for many. So I think there's a potentially huge population base out there of potential patients that can't even explore the benefits of cannabis because it's so expensive.
And some of this, I think, and some of these regulations were set up to fail.
Correct.
It was made so daunting that possibly people would turn away, and then the entire industry would constrict the way it is constricting now.
Exactly. I just think there needs to be a better way for the folks who could truly benefit, who can't afford it, could have access. And unfortunately, we don't have anything like that. There are some discounts that are applied if you're on food stamps. I know some dispensaries will offer a 10-15% discount. But I know a 91-year-old woman who truly saw the benefits of taking CBD, and she has to stop taking it because she can't afford the $150 a month.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Talk a little bit about the special program that you developed with the Broward County Sheriff's Office.
So
this is for EMS workers.
correct.
Right?
This is for EMS. So many years ago, when Rebecca's seizure started to get really, really bad for the first time, I think it was back in 2009. We would call 911 at least 2 or 3 times a week. And every time they came, they asked the same question: what meds is she on? How many milligrams? And if your child is lying there on the floor, blue, not breathing, and an EMS person says to you, how many milligrams of their seizure medication, you could make a mistake and say 10 instead of 20 or 20 instead of 10 because you're in a moment of crisis. So I felt at the time, along with some other BSO leaders, there's got to be an easier way that won't cost a lot of money. And we created at the time, it's called the Becca Program. It stands for Broward Emergency Critical Care Assistance. And basically what it is, a very simple form that was created by EMS professionals where a parent can go online, download the form, write in the child's condition, write in all their meds, and that document you just print out and you can put it with the child's backpack, and it's always on them at every given time. That way when there is an emergency, you pull it out and it's right there.
Every question that the EMS was going to ask, they already have it.
They already have it, and you could update it.
That's absolutely, and that's already, has that been now put in place now here?
Yes, that's it's available on the BSO website. You can download the form, and many families and schools are very well aware of it. And so is EMS.
So, wow, great. That's great. Seth, what else are you working on?
Working on some potential other products that are hemp-based that are really exciting that we believe will be very new to the market, and the future looks very bright. There's so much opportunity out there, but I think it's very important for consumers, patients, to just do their own homework and due diligence on the products they buy and the companies they get involved with. It's very easy to get caught up with products that might look good or sound good, but yet they don't really do what they're supposed to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, and there's a lot of products out in this marketplace that we've now found out that have labels on them claiming to have CBD in them. And when you actually go and take a look at the research on them, and there's 0 or there's 2 or 3 milligrams. And, we know that 2 or 3 milligrams does nothing.
Exactly. And there have been some lawsuits about that. And it's unfortunate, Montel, because there are some good companies here in Florida that are producing some really great quality product. And unfortunately, when they come across very zealous news reporters who are just trying to not make them look good as good as they should, some of the testing is flawed, so you're not getting true results. And unfortunately, those good companies that are making these good products are getting a bad rap. Right. There's so much chaos in the industry right now, and everyone's still trying to sort it out. Edibles right now, we all know, federally, the FDA hasn't come out clearly with guidelines on edibles, but yet you see edibles everywhere.
Right.
Consumers don't know that they're technically not legal according to the feds, but they're everywhere.
But then state laws, and again, that's part of the issue that dealing with it. Right now, in 34 states in the District of Columbia that have some form of medical marijuana or marijuana law, and every one of the states is different. So whether the feds, agree with edibles or not, the state law will allow them, but then the state law doesn't do anything to supervise or oversee the production of.
Correct. And then if you see a product made in one state, but if you see a product from Florida and it's in California and it's an edible, supposedly according to the FDA, you can't cross state lines.
Correct. That's against the law. So therefore, whether the product was shipped in or it is a fake product.
Right.
And, I often say to people that, unfortunately, the way we have to navigate this space right now is you can't assume that a product that you saw the brand name of in California and now you see the same brand name in Ohio, it may not be the same product.
Who's policing it?
Yeah, who's policing it? And then technically, it can't be by law the same product. So therefore, unless you know that the manufacturer of the California product has now set up shop in the other state to manufacture in that other state based on cannabis that they grew in that state, which when it all starts in a new state, there shouldn't be any cannabis in that state.
Right.
So therefore, the seeds came from somewhere. They didn't just appear. That's one of the things that cracks me up is that no one asks, where does seed come from?
Right. And also a lot of, in the food industry, in restaurants, I've seen a lot of restaurants pop up, put CBD on your pizza, in your milkshake. Who's getting the raw end of the deal? The consumer. They're paying more for something. They don't even know if they're getting it.
Correct.
And two, if you're paying $10 extra for CBD on your pizza, and you're getting 25 milligrams of CBD on that pizza, is that really?
How about you're only getting 1 milligram of CBD on that pizza? Did that do anything for you?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I feel good. I feel mellow from this slice.
You don't feel mellow from nothing. It's all in your brain.
Exactly.
And it cracks me up too because again, people don't even understand that some of these edible products, people claim to put CBD in them, then they bake them for 3 hours, 2 hours, an hour and a half. You just baked all of the viable medical ingredient of that product out.
Exactly.
You overheated it and it's gone.
And in all fairness, I think that's a good thing where there is regulation, because there does need to be some sort of regulation for these type of ingredients.
This entire industry should applaud the opportunity for regulation.
Absolutely.
We need to figure out a way to make sure that there is a consistent product that every time a person reaches for it, they get the same reaction from that particular. I don't care if you got 7 million different products, but I know that if I get, product number 5,162,162, that product will elicit the same response every time I touch it.
And also, many of the manufacturers and the people selling these products don't even know what they're selling.
Correct. Some of them, again, so I look at it and wonder, the same people who 10 years ago were so adamantly against cannabis now have jumped in to see if they can be part of the industry to make money in the green rush.
I got a phone call a couple of weeks ago from a doctor. Doctor calls me up cold. He said he's new to the cannabis industry in Florida. And the first thing he said to me is, I think your daughter needs more CBDs in her body. I'm like, okay, thank you. Have a nice day.
Yeah, have a nice day.
More CBDs.
Yeah, you need CBDs in your body, yeah. I got to say thank you so much to Mr. Seth Hyman for being here. And again, the company is called Hempagenix. And how can people, again, go up on your website, give them the information?
Just go to CannaNumb.com. That's CannaNumb.com. And on checkout, enter in Montel, and you will receive 20% off your order. And that will be good through the end of February.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. You heard it, end of February. And if somebody, is listening and understands because their family has been going through something similar to you with a child that may have the same kind of malady, can they reach out to get any information from you?
Absolutely.
Where should they go there for that?
Absolutely. They can go to the Hempagenix or the CannaNumb.com website, and there is a link on Contact Us, or it's info@hempagenix.com, and feel free to reach out, and we will respond to every question and speak to the patients and speak to consumers. We're there to help.
That's what we want to do, is be there to help you. And I can't say thank you enough again, Seth, for being a part of today's show. And you know what you got to do at home. Make sure you tune into every single episode of Let's Be Blunt with Montel. But thanks for tuning in today. Have a good one.
Thanks, Montel.
Thank you, sir.